Hi everyone, in this video I challenged myself to build an entire robot using only what's inside this Gunpla option parts set. Can I do it? Yes I can. But let me show you how I did it, because that's the fun part. I really only picked up this box because the corner was smashed and it was in the bargains bin. Everything inside is totally fine, it's just the corner was a little messed up. Originally, I was just going to use these as greeblies and other things, but I decided I would challenge myself and see if I could build an entire robot using only these parts. Now, there's a lot of great parts, and it does look like there are some doubles, but unfortunately, that's not the case. They're actually single pieces, they're just two sides of that one piece. Now, what does that mean for me? Well, usually when I'm building robots, I have to find pieces that have multiples of the same piece so that I can keep everything symmetrical. This just adds an extra layer to the challenge. The first thing I do is remove all the pieces from the sprues to make it easier to start dry fitting things together. I make sure to hold on to the sprues still because they'll come in handy later. They are in the box, so technically it counts. I start with the head because it was easiest and I already had an idea in my head of how I wanted it to look. So I'm gluing these two circular pieces together. Then for the eyes, I'll be taking this piece here, cutting off these stalks, and I'll save those little stalks for later because I'm sure they'll come in handy. It will attach to the head something like this, but first I have to fill these eye holes. And I'm going to use the decal stickers that came with the kit. I use a specialized hole punch to cut out a small bit from the sticker, and I'll use that sticker to cover up the holes in the back of the eyes. I stick it to the back of the eyes and then trim the excess to shape. I do add a bit of super glue just to make sure everything sticks. I glue the eyes in place using a bit more super glue, and then I can work on making some antennas. For the antennas, I'm just going to take the barrels off of these tiny blasters, drill some holes in the top, and then glue the antennas in place. For the legs, I'm starting with this piece here. This will be both the pelvis as well as the upper legs or thighs. And then these parts here, which are the blasters that I took the antennas from, will be the lower legs. To build a strong connection, I'm going to cut out a knee joint from that upper leg. This is a pretty delicate job, so I'm using a low-powered rotary tool and a cutoff wheel and cutting out some small bits of plastic. Then I very carefully hand sand the hinge joint to its final fit. The lower part of the leg will fit in just like this, and it's a nice snug fit, but I will be gluing it in later. Now that I know that that actually works, I do the same thing to the other side, and I dry fit both legs in place. I'm not gluing anything yet so that I can pose everything later. I know I'm not going to use this bit on top, so I cut it off and save it for later. And the legs will attach to the torso something like this. Speaking of the torso, that is the next thing I'll work on, and I'm going to use this piece, and I'm going to start by cutting off this central post to make room for a few other pieces. To build up the sides, I'm using this piece of plastic here. I just need that central bit, so I'm going to cut off this extra little bit of plastic and glue that main piece in place. Now luckily I have two of that same piece. They're slightly different on the outside, but the main part in the middle is the same, and that's what I need. So I cut off the extra bits and glue it in place. To cover up the back, I'm going to use the bottom third of this shield, and I'm just going to cut it off using that rotary tool I used before and a cutoff wheel. If you want to check out this tool and many of the other tools and materials that I used during these projects, I have links in the description below. I still have a few holes in the side of the torso, so I'm going to use another piece of that antenna blaster and cover them up. For the anchor point into the legs, I'll be using this piece here, which I believe is the front of the cannon. For the neck, I'll be using this piece here, and as you can see, there is still a bit of a gap in between, so I'm going to take another piece that I cut off earlier and fill that space. Here's how the torso is looking so far. I'm going to add one more decorative piece to the back, and then I'll move on to attaching the legs to the torso. Now I want the legs to attach something like this, but I found that the bottom of the torso and this part of the legs fits beautifully together. I want to use this strong connection, so I'm going to cut the legs off on the sides, and then I'll reattach them later in the right position. I will add a few pins in the legs to keep everything together. Now I know that those pins aren't actually part of the original box, but they're just there to keep me from accidentally breaking off the legs later. Now robot feet have always been somewhat difficult for me to make, and even more so with limited supply. Now luckily I found that these blasters have a relatively foot-like shape to them, so I'm going to cut off the ends, and luckily I have 2 of them. This is also when I start to use pieces of the sprue. I'm going to cut off a small piece, and in this case I'll use it for the ankle joint on the foot. Once I cut it down to size, I can attach it to the top of the foot. Alrighty, let's work on some arms. I'm going to be using a couple pieces from this barrel, so I'm going to cut it up. I'm going to start by cutting off this center bit here. Here it is. I'm going to glue those 2 halves together and then cut it in half again. Now this part here will become the shoulder, but to fill all that open space inside, I'm going to use another piece of sprue and fill it up. For the upper part of the arm, I'll be using another piece of that barrel plus another piece of sprue. I glue that in place and then cut it down to size. This is another piece of sprue that I'll be using as an elbow joint. I'll attach them together with a pin to make sure everything is nice and strong. For the lower half of the arm and also the hand, I'm going to use a few pieces off of this barrel lance thing. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'm going to cut off a few pieces, and these will be the 2 parts that I use for the lower half of the arm and also the hand. It's kind of all in one. I'm drilling these holes so that I can attach the fingers, which are made out of more sprues. I wanted to make some more detailed, smaller hands, but I really didn't have the parts, especially that small, so I just ended up recreating Bender's hands from Futurama, and they worked pretty well. I just have to attach the hands to the upper arms and then the arms to the torso. I glue on the head to the final position, and then I glue on a few more decorative pieces. And here's all the pieces that I had either cut off and didn't use or just didn't use at all. Funny enough, there's actually a few pieces here that I was almost positive at the beginning I was going to use, like these 2 pieces. They just didn't end up working out proportionally, so I'll save them for later. And here's my robot all put together and finished and ready for paint. Speaking of painting, I'm going to cover this entire thing in a flat black primer. I'll then add a base layer of white spray paint, and I can start adding color. I'm going to start by mixing about 90% light orange with 10% dark vermilion to get a darker orange. I'll then start to apply paint to different sections. As per usual, I don't really have a plan when I start painting. I just start to paint and see what happens. It's one of those things where you just have to trust the process. With this white base, these colors go on really nicely, and I only do about 2 coats of color. And now that we're in the painting process, it's time for me to thank my patrons and do my classic YouTube spiel. Thank you to my patrons. Your support not only helps me buy materials, but you also inspire me to continue making. If you would like to join my Patreon, I'll have links at the end of this video, in the description, and on my page. Not only do you get a shout out in every single one of my videos, but you also get access to some cool behind the scenes photos that no one else gets to see. If you'd like to support this channel for absolutely free, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing these videos. If you're liking what you see here, I've got a whole bunch of other videos on my channel, so check those out as well. Because this is such a small model, I'm going to keep this weathering very light. So I'm going to use this Tamiya weathering kit. basically a little makeup kit for your models. I use a mix of about 50-50 brown and black on this little makeup sponge. Then I just start to apply the weathering powder onto the model. I start on the edges of the model and then work my way in, sometimes using my fingers to blend everything in place. Using this gunmetal metallic, I add some slight paint chipping effects with a very small brush on the edges of some of the pieces. This is one of the smallest bots I've made, and I don't want to overdo this weathering. I made a small stand off camera, I glue my robot in place, and with that, this project is pretty much done. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time making this robot, and honestly, I'm so proud of how that paint job turned out. Thank you again to my patrons, and thank you all for watching. Please do consider subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing. It's all free and it all helps this channel grow. I know I say it a lot, but seriously, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.